Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. The Grant. My name is Niels Tuller Winter, and I am the creator, editor, and host of The Grant. The Grant is an independent, non-commercial podcast initiative with the ambition to dig into all corners of the EU R&D funding system on topics of interest for the full EU R&D funding community. One of the key concerns for all proposal writers is the evaluation of their proposals, or more, how they will be evaluated. Whenever I've been asking guests for requests on who they would like to be on the grant, most of them have replied, "An evaluator, please." Well, this week I have a treat for you all. I have not only one, but 3 evaluators in the virtual podcast studio to solidly reply to your requests out there. In this monster panel, I have gathered CEO Alessia Melasecche Germini from Meta Group, Research and Grants Officer Daniela Angione from Innofarma Technology, and Managing Director Yoram Bar-Zeev from Enspire Science. The focus is on Horizon Europe Pillar 2 proposals, which all 3 guests have years of evaluation experience in. As you can imagine, it became a long recording, so I have divided it into 2 episodes. In this first half, we cover the evaluation process, the rules and regulation that evaluators they have to follow, and finally, how to evaluate a complex Horizon Europe proposal. Please enjoy. Grant. Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. Today, this is one of the nice things when you really put an effort into something that I'm doing. This is something what you're going to listen to today is something that I've been working for a long time, and it's such a pleasure. It's such a satisfaction when things come together and it's actually happening. So, since I started this initiative, well, a year and a half ago, I've been wanting to have doing an evaluator episode. And again, my guests, when I've been asking them, so what would your wish be for an episode? What would you wish to hear? An evaluator. Please see if you can find an evaluator. Now, I have a treat for you guys out there. So it's a treat both for me and for you. I have 3 evaluators with me today. So I've already been talking way too long in introducing this episode, but it's just I'm just so happy. So, ladies first, Alessia, welcome.
Hi, welcome. Thank you very much. I'm Alessia Melasecche Germini. I'm the CEO of Meta Group, and Meta Group is an international advisory company operating in the innovation chain. And when it goes to evaluations, I started my experience in 2013. So that was FP7. And then throughout the last 10 years, have been engaged for H2020 and Horizon Europe, different type of DGs, different type of programs, as well the European DEIT and other agencies and institutions.
Thank you. And regulars will recognize the voice because you are a former guest of the show. You were in here in episode 74 and 75 to share about the Horizon Results Booster, of which you are the managing director. So interestees can go there. Next, and this is a new kid on the block. Daniela, welcome.
Thank you, Niels. So my name is Daniela Angione, and I'm the head of funding and innovation in InnoGlobal. InnoGlobal is an SME based in Ireland, in Dublin, that is we're leading in activities in upskilling or reskilling, in addition to also advanced manufacturing in terms of developing hardware and software in advanced manufacturing. So my experience as evaluator started back in 2018. So a few years, and I've evaluated different proposals in different programs: Horizon 2020, Horizon Europe, but also EIC and the Excel joint undertaking. And so different programs, but the same field of application, which is relevant to my background.
Mm-hmm. And of course, this is something that we'll dig into a little later. And fun fact here, Daniela is also a very skilled and a musical person, playing
Well, thanks,
shoegaze or
Niels.
rock music, which I myself is a fan of. It's actually wonderful music, and there will be a podcast in my other initiative, the Far Distance Band podcast, where she's invited together with her husband. But so I will. Everybody who's interested in that, that will come up sometime in the new year. No, Yoram, start become a regular on the show. Nice to have you back.
Yeah, nice to be here again. My name is Yoram Bar-Zeev, coming from Enspire Science in Israel. It's a consultancy company. Our main focus is EU funding. And personally, I'm involved in EU projects since FP4, 1996, supporting and consulting on various grants. We're covering pretty much the entire program, including the EIC, ERC, all the pillars. As for evaluation tasks, I've been evaluating proposals since FP6 through FP7, Horizon 2020. In Horizon Europe, I didn't get to do that yet. I was invited several times, but I had to decline.
Thanks. Now, it's a quite substantial episode that we're going to hit on today here. And so thanks for the short introduction. It's kind, because then I didn't have to cut anything out in the editing to make things fit. This is, as I also said in the introduction, this is a subject that is on the top of mind for many people out there that are accessing the funding schemes, no matter what funding scheme. What will people think of what I do? Yeah, what will people think of the big work that we sit and do? So it's down to that very anxiety feeling that why this is something that everybody thinks it's important. And there's a lot of things around this, of course, of the whole thing, evaluation, the whole discourse of evaluation, so the whole concept. And we will try to have a fly. It's not going to be the last episode. This is something that I'm going to cover on a continuous basis in the podcast, naturally, because there's so many elements. But we'll try to give it a go as an introduction to what this is all about. And I put here in the rundown, and it might be a little bit of broad label to have a fly in on evaluation and a short introduction to the evaluation institution. It's just to have an entry to what we're going to talk about today. So naturally, practicalities around this. There's some logistics around how it's set up. But maybe, Yoram, can you give us an idea of the concept itself before we dig into it? Because it's the system, right? You have the whole problem, challenge-based, call-based system where you write up against and then flows into someone that has to look at that. So can you maybe share that?
Yes, I will try to do that from kind of a bird's eye view, because after all, we need to look into the specific instructions per grant, because there are different ways of handling different grants. Mm-hmm. But there are a few things that we need to keep in mind. The first thing is that this entire program, which gives away public money, needs to go through this kind of evaluation process and should be as reliable as possible. And for that matter, they are putting a lot of effort into that. By the way, I have experience working also with other programs, the Americans, the Israelis one, and I have to say that I really like the European program. It's much better than all others, despite its flaws. So they put this system into place, which let's say the first principle we need to refer to is the fact that proposals are being evaluated by external experts, not by European Commission officials. And this is something that we need to distinguish between, because one of the, let's say, first or main questions that we get is how the European Commission is going to assess my proposal.
Yeah.
But effectively, it's not the European Commission assessing it directly. It's people that the European Commission is hiring to do the job that are assessing this, and the European Commission is going to fully respect the decision. Well, there are some exceptions to that, but in most cases, this is the program. So first thing to remember is to distinguish between the system, meaning the European Commission, and the individuals, which are the experts, who are actually assessing the applications. And for that matter, there is a process and there is a structure, which we can elaborate, of course. But this is one important thing to remember. And in that sense, if I'm going to revisit the question of how they are going to assess this, well, here we need to refer to all sorts of criteria. We can discuss it, of course, in more details, but also to remember that we need to convince enough reviewers in the process that your project should be funded. Now, in many grants under the program, we're talking about 3-4 experts. But there are areas like the ERC, for example, that it can reach 10, 12, 16 reviewers. A lot of people to convince. So I hope this gives you the kind of the bird's eye view on what to expect here. And if you want, maybe we should break it down now.
Yeah. Because that's the thing. The European Commission is administering, so to say. They are putting the frame around it, but the actual content in the process, that's sort of arm's length principle, right? So someone else is doing it. We are offering the grants, and then we have independent evaluators, knowledgeable, in the best case, knowledgeable about what you are applying for, that will evaluate whether it's the quality of your description of what you want to do and the idea and so on. And then the commission, when they get that back, they get a list. They list them up, in a ranking of different point systems, and then they hand out the money based on that. So I guess from a public administrator's point of view, it's as clear and clean as it should be able to be. Yeah.
In most cases, yes.
Indeed. Now, maybe we should make a disclaimer here, because this you have many funding schemes, and I am also folding out different funding schemes in my podcast universe. But I think it should be clear that today we're going to talk about Horizon Europe, and mostly the Pillar 2. First stop on this episode, that's I put the evaluation process. I'm going to wait a little bit. It's on purpose that I put your own expertise first, because I could have done that, but I didn't. So the logic here, I wanted to, let's look at the process first. What is it actually looking like? So sort of having a timeline issue here, yeah, to sort of say, okay, what happens when my proposal is submitted? So Yoram, you already gave us a little bit, but maybe Alessia, can you? So how is it organized? What happens? So you press submit, and you pop the champagne, beers, whatever people do, and then people, they forget all about this. But what happens behind that curtain in the algorithm, so to say, in the whole system, the servers? What happens?
It happens that the Commission, of course, receives all the different proposals, and proposals are assigned to be evaluated to experts. But before that, actually, while applicants are still writing their proposals, a bunch of experts, it's pre-contacted to know if they would be available to be part of the evaluation process of a specific call or a bunch of calls. So experts give an availability, and then if they confirm they are available, I mean, a lot of questions actually are posed to experts when they have to give availability in terms of timing, in terms of which calls, in terms of the experience, in terms of the roles that they could have, because within the evaluation team, there are experts which evaluate, but there is as well a rapporteur, which has, an additional role to the expert team. And therefore, and even experts then wait for a further feedback from the Commission to know if they have been chosen to be part of the evaluation process, which comes later after all the proposals have been submitted, because the Commission needs to check as well the number of proposals, and each team is composed, as Yoram was anticipating, 3-4 depending, but I mean, when it comes to Horizon 2020 and now Horizon Europe, it's 3 people plus the rapporteur. Then it could be, yes, it could even be, there could be even other roles on board in the team. So there are as well the people who have the role to check that the process goes in the proper direction, the evaluation process, or even a further layer of check that the Commission adds to the evaluation process. And then when all the experts accept finally to be on board and they are confirmed, they need to take some training on what they are supposed to do. And even if they did in the past already, they need to go through several type of trainings, which are usually nowadays videos with slides on the top, on the calls, on the topic, on how to evaluate, on how to draft a proper evaluation, individual evaluation report. Then one by one, the proposals are assigned, and usually evaluators have something like 24 hours to accept the evaluation and to declare eventual conflict of interest, which could happen if you, of course, fall in certain categories of professionals, and you have certain type of links. Of course, if your organization submitted a proposal, I mean, things that are checked till the very last moment, because, of course, the Commission would like to avoid such a situation happening. And then you accept or decline to evaluate. Then usually you have 1 week to draft the first version of your individual evaluation report. I mean, usually it's 1 week. Then it depends much on how many proposals, on the specific case, on the period of the year. I mean, it happened to me to evaluate several times through the Christmas period, and then the Commission allowed to have, some days more. So this it's flexible to a certain extent. Then when the individual evaluation report is completed, the experts submit it, and then all the different reports prepared on a proposal are put together by the rapporteur on what will be a draft consensus evaluation report. Then it's organized, the consensus meeting among all the experts which have been part of the first phase of the process. And it takes place nowadays online. In the past, it was physically in Brussels. Nowadays, so this happens online, everybody connected. At the same time, there are very precise time slots to do the consensus meeting. And during the consensus meeting, actually experts go criteria by criteria, but even sub-criteria by sub-criteria. So the 3 different criteria: excellence, impact, and quality, efficiency of implementation. And then there are sub-criteria to be addressed, plus additional elements to be considered. And then, of course, when an agreement is found the rapporteur drafts the consensus report. And of course, there could be even, I would say, minority opinions which could be reported, which are reported if this is the case, because before becoming public, the report is as well evaluated by the Commission people to check consistency among the narrative and the scorings. And as you know, experts are requested to motivate the scoring, in a detailed way, and the proposals to pass, to be in the ranking, they need, of course, to pass a threshold per each criteria, but then there is usually an overall threshold which is higher than just the sum of the minimum thresholds of the three criteria. So usually it's three, usually it's, what it happens, but it depends again on the scheme, but it's 3 out of 5 or could be 3.5 out of 5 per each criterion, but then it's not enough to achieve 9, which is 3 and 3 and 3, but you need at least to achieve 10 or even more, depending again on the scheme. Then all the proposals are ranked, coming out from all these evaluation teams, and actually there are experts coming from the different evaluation teams which are appointed for the ranking panel. What does it mean? It means that there could be the case that under the same call or subtopic, actually there is more than one proposal who received exactly the same scoring at the end. But the funding is not enough to, of course, award all of them that are beyond the threshold. And therefore, there are new expert teams picked from the original ones, which are somehow reviewing back the reports and reviewing back the consistency and reviewing back if, there is something which could be considered in a different way to adjust the scoring. When this is done, there is a final ranking and then a decision is taken. Of course, in between all those passages, there are as well meetings and calls with the Commission people, usually the POs, which are leading and responsible per each topic, coordinating the different evaluation teams.
See, this was an absolutely beautiful sum up of the full process. It doesn't mean that the podcast has ended here. Because there are a lot of things to talk about here. Now, thanks, Alessia. That was beautiful. Now, first of all, I guess there's a pre-check, yeah? There's a pre-check from the Commission that all the formalities, all the things that you're asked, that actually has to be okay. So that's the first sorting is already happening there, right?
Yes.
But how long does it take from submission date until the experts are contacted first time?
The first time experts are contacted even before the submission date. Let's say last time what happened to me. Actually, I was supposed to start evaluating in December 2022, in between December 2022 and January 2023. Actually, the very first time I was contacted to check my availability was in June 2022.
Yeah.
Then I gave my availability. Then I got a second email confirming that I was selected to be part of the evaluation team something around October 2022, because the deadline for the submission was in December 2022. So you see, it's a parallel process somehow, which goes in parallel with the submission.
Yeah.
And you are told since the very beginning in which period of the year then the evaluation is happening as well, to organize yourself and to give your availability, being informed of when you will be, committed to the scope.
Daniela, this coordination with other evaluators.
Yeah.
How does that work? Is that direct contact? How does that work in the panel of three? Is it administratively booked from the commission, a meeting where you meet the three of you? How does that work?
Yeah. So as Alessia has mentioned before, I think the meeting with the other experts, which could be three, but I have been involved in evaluation where the experts were actually five. And so that was a two-stage proposal. No, it was actually Horizon Europe, but it was a two-stage proposal. So the second stage, we were in five experts, which was actually really interesting. So the when you submit your individual evaluation report, that happens not during a meeting. So it happens offline. You work at your own pace. You submit according to a deadline, and then you merge the three individual evaluation reports. But then, as Alessia said, when you have to draft the consensus report, there is first a draft where the rapporteur merge all of the three together and trying to identify commonalities, but also aspect where the reports are diverging. So there's no consensus on some aspect of the evaluation. At that point, usually what happens is that in the draft of the 3 or 5 individual evaluation report, you try as a rapporteur to identify the commonalities and something that has to be discussed because there's not consensus, and that is what is going usually to be addressed at the consensus report meeting. So the consensus meeting is organized in terms of the time of the day and the day by the European Commission. Of course, they ask the expert availability in terms of their schedule, but then there's a specific slot that usually is 1 hour and 45 minutes that is dedicated for this consensus.
Is that
meeting.
enough?
And no. And generally we always take more time, and there's always rush to wrap up one meeting and start another one, because every evaluator, usually they don't evaluate only one proposal, so they are involved in more than one depending on the topic. There's some topics that receive they receive a lot of submissions and other a bit less, but there's generally each evaluator get between 4 and 10 proposals to evaluate. So it's very tricky. And sometimes when we can't reach consensus during meeting, because we can't, there's a second meeting organized by the European Commission. And that happens very frequently, especially when there are proposals where there's several elements where usually for me, in my experience at least, the proposals which are a bit borderline, they are the more difficult to evaluate in terms to achieve consensus between all the experts. But yeah, so once we achieve, so once the meeting is over, then the role of the rapporteur is that to take all the comments, and of course you have to agree on the score, which is another important aspect. So not only the comments, we agree on the comments, but also we agree to how to translate the comments into a score, because that's another aspect that is not, sometimes it's not straightforward. There are rules, of course, and that's that's the rules that they come from the briefing of the evaluation and from the European Commission. But sometimes the words used are extremely important, and we need to pick them carefully to make sure that those words are translating the score that we are giving to a specific.
We're going to get back to this, to the time content paradox, right? People spending months on something, and then you need to evaluate that in a very short time. But we'll get back to that a little later.
Yeah.
Have you experienced that there was so much disagreement that what happens if you can't? What happens? Because that, for instance, content-wise, say that there's one very knowledgeable about a specific topic, and one less. It's just, I'm just pulling it out, right? And one that knows of it, but not in, and where there's a content disagreement, saying, look, they have it absolutely right. I don't understand why this is right. What happens in that case? What do you do?
Yeah, so it has happened. Yeah, a few times. And you have to dig deeper and trying to understand where is the disagreement stemming from. So in the sense that sometimes it has happened to me that an evaluator that had less experience in evaluating proposal was giving comments that were extremely positive because on a specific topic, right, or specific topic or a specific aspect of the proposal. Because he said to me, I think the idea that they have is great. And I think this approach that they want to use, I think is fantastic and is breakthrough. And I don't understand why you don't see this. Because he was expert in that aspect and he thought that was a breakthrough. The problem is that this is only an aspect of the evaluation. So looking at the idea, but also when we evaluate, we have a very strict criteria that we have to evaluate in a specific part of the proposal. So it's not only how breakthrough and how innovative is the idea, but also how it has been written and elaborated and put out. I can't only judge by my guts, if that proposal is good or not. I actually have to go through each line and each aspect of this. So
it's a scientific process, basically.
Yeah, it's a scientific problem. We can't evaluate only because I have the feeling that this is going to work.
They're great guys.
Yes.
Give them the money.
So that was one example. Another example is that there's one person who, and usually that's what happens when you have three experts. The European Commission is choosing the expert where they have expertise in different aspects of the proposal. The proposals are interdisciplinary, most of all of them. Well, they have to be kind of. So there's an expert that is very knowledgeable in one. For example, the electronic engineering, right, aspect of that, and another one more on the biosensing of that, and another one. So what might happen is that one expert that is looking only narrowly at his expertise, right, which is
psychological,
so
it's normal.
It picks some aspect of the proposal that could be like in I'm talking about either good comments or bad not very well approached aspect of that, and just highlights that, so not keeping the full picture, right, of what is actually the whole thing happening. And so that also usually happens at a consensus meeting where there is a disagreement because somebody says, yeah, but they haven't looked at this. And then they miss the point that actually the rest of it actually was quite good. So we have to find really the balance. I think finding the balance is the tricky part. But I think unless there is really, as Alessia said, there is always the opportunity, like the chance to put a minority opinion into the evaluation process. There's usually, we try to find agreement, and so we're trying to understand where it's stemming. Sometimes what happens as well is that a comment is placed in a wrong section of the evaluation report. So something that at the beginning is taken or it comes up during the evaluation of the excellence, but after the discussion, actually we realize that is more related to the impact. And then because remember, you're evaluating a proposal, sometimes more than one, but that's not the problem. The problem is that you have so many other sub-criteria for each of the criteria, right? That we have to follow, that sometimes, we kind of, you misplace one comment from one sub-criteria of one section into another section. So we also have to make sure that is taken into account.
And here, the European Commission, they're not making it easy on you, right? Just thinking back on seeing the development from FP6 and FP7, the kind of the content of calls, especially in Pillar 2 that we're talking about today, the development has gone from fairly narrow, focus on narrow technology areas under the overall technology areas, to having, I'm thinking Green Deal calls, for instance, right? Some years ago, where you had to cover 6, 7 different fairly large technology areas and research, consumer behavior, also, the social research stuff like. If you have three, you cannot. If you have three evaluators, they cannot. It's how do you want? You cannot. And then you add the time limit that you have, the constraint you have as a person, right? Doesn't matter how skilled you are in screening a text, content heavy text, but at some point of time, that's just human. To sort that in the criteria that you're giving and in that flow, making. Yeah, so that's from that point of view. Of course, the consensus meetings are very, very important because you catch each other, right? I guess that's also the point to have them.
Sorry, Niels, and sometimes actually during this consensus meeting, after discussing, there are some experts that they realize that they've made a mistake and are like, sorry, I've actually missed this, or I have over evaluated or over reacted, for this aspect. So those meetings are actually extremely important for the final evaluation. Yeah.
What do you do with your own, Yoram? Just did you ever sit with a feeling, say a couple of weeks after you finished, and thought back, maybe I was a little rough there?
Yes.
Actually, this idea was and they actually got that right.
Yeah, definitely there are some stories, evaluation stories, that haunt me until today. Some very good examples. But yes, it is a process that definitely, it's kind of a mental process that we go through in evaluating that. I always say, and that's my honest feedback on that, is that I believe that most evaluators are stepping into the process in a very positive attitude, meaning they are in favor of the applicants, and we want them to succeed. So personally, this is my, let's say, opening phase. But then I hit reality, and then I start reading all sorts of proposals. Of course, some of them are very good, but on the other hand, you get some examples of very bad either ideas or writing, or a combination of bad ideas and bad writing, missing the point, not addressing correctly the topic, and then we need to handle this. And on top of that, there is also this, we are all human beings, so we have all sorts of biases that we need to struggle with. Confirmation bias is something very common in evaluation. So we need to be careful with that. So it affects us through the process. And of course, in the past, as I said, I didn't evaluate in Horizon Europe yet, but in the past, I definitely remember that I was reading again and again. Each proposal I read about 3-4 times in the process, and going back and forth in the proposal to see whether I didn't miss anything. And as Daniela mentioned, in consensus meetings, yes, sometimes I had to go back and recheck myself. And on the other hand, I've highlighted things that others refer to as well. And yes, in some cases, I took this experience with me as kind of either a good or bad story. It depends on the case.
Let's thanks. Let's it's a nice bridge now. I think we covered quite well. Digging a little bit into it also. So let's move into what you've started touching a little bit. So how you are trained, so to say, the rules or regulation that you have to follow as an evaluator. So first of all, my first question here. So how does the commission secure consistency?
Consistency of what? Of what? There are all sorts of things to keep consistency of. So you need to be specific here.
Yeah, consistency of the quality of the evaluation of the proposals. And here we're talking about, I think I have some sub-questions here also, like training sessions. You mentioned it, Alessia. Guiding, is there a handbook? That's also a question. So how does the commission train you? What happens when you step into that and say, yeah, I want to become an evaluator, they accept you? What happens? Is there some guidance for everybody? Do they then enroll and then you have things you have to go through? Or is it like Alessia said, up to each call that you go through? So how does that work? Who wants to pick that up?
There is not a general training for everybody.
Okay.
Training is very specific for each call, each topic. And within each call, you need as well to consider that could be different schemes, and even different schemes are evaluated in a different way. Mm-hmm. So this is very specific. This is very detailed. And actually, in the past, this was done, in person, of course, when we used to meet, but in Brussels. Mm-hmm. But then for a period, this was happening in, online meetings, live meetings. Nowadays, this is happening through pre-recorded videos from the Commission, which are, of course, sent to the evaluators, and of course evaluators go through them, and they're very detailed with very precise rules. First of all, of course, they start, from the general view on the topic, the call, and then it narrows more and more on the evaluation process, on the evaluation criteria, sub-criteria, how to use the wording, as Daniela was mentioning. This is very, very specific, and they recommend to avoid, of course, generic type of wording, to be specific, to explain why an evaluation has gone in a certain direction or another, if there is positive or negative comments. It's important for the Commission that the first evaluation, when I was mentioning the individual evaluation report, this is done independently. Each expert does it on his own in the, wherever it is, but independently from the others. And there is another very important point to be considered, is that the Commission always recommends not to punish twice, or not, to give more scores, higher scores, just, under two different criteria for the same element. Mm-hmm. So this goes back to what Daniela was mentioning in terms, sometimes disagreement in the evaluation team, it's connected by the fact that perhaps you didn't realize, or somebody in the team didn't realize that perhaps you evaluated a specific element under a sub-criterion, and another one evaluated the same element under another sub-criterion. So this is why the consensus, as it was mentioned, is very important. But the important point is that you cannot use the same comment twice to, under two different criteria, to justify your scoring. So if there is something which is not going in the right direction in the proposal, this needs to be clearly defined, assessed, and then explained, but it stays under a specific, in a specific place in the evaluation report. So this is something which is very, very important, because you need to consider that while explaining the process, actually I missed one step. When after the consensus meeting, when there is a consensus report, this goes to the commission for consistency check in between, as I said, the narrative and the scoring. But it could happen, and actually it happens very often, that POs from the commission which have this role, actually they find out that there are some inconsistencies, or they think that the narrative is not duly justifying the scoring. So this means that the report goes back to a consensus meeting and to the same people, which needs to address specific elements which have been highlighted by the quality check to be solved. It happened to me once that, we all agreed that the proposal was a really good one, and actually it came out that this was 15 out of 15. But and even if we do not, highlight any weakness, any shortcoming, and we were very positive, the commission thought that in explaining we were not enough positive to justify that scoring. And therefore we had to add details why we thought that this should be a 15 out of 15, So those type of things happen very often.
If I may add, there's also another role from the European Commission that checks, not only, as Alessia mentioned, the quality controller, let's say, but is also the observer. The observer that usually is observing the consensus meetings, that is silent, so is only observing it. It doesn't intervene, but is making sure that even the meeting, they are running smoothly and they are following the process, and they are following a fair process and evaluation.
So there's a referee.
It's kind of, yeah, it's kind of is an invisible figure that is there. There's no, you don't even see him, you don't see him or her. You don't see this person, this observer, and but if you have any issue, so if you feel as an expert that even the process, so it's also, for us to make sure that we have some sort of support. We can go and reach out to the observer and talk and discuss.
You know
anything.
what? This is to answer your because what do you mean with consistency? This is, I guess, also what I meant, right? So from the commission side, they know that they can get a whole bunch of different people as evaluators in, and they, from their side as funding administrators, need to make sure that it's independent. We don't do anything, but we need to make sure that wait a minute, we need to get back to this one in future evaluations, just to make sure that the person has understood perfectly the role or how to read, which is natural. Yeah, because it's if you're doing it for the first time or second time, it's complex. Do you have? Is there some sort of? Do you have a document? Do you have some sort of like you have for the NCPs, for instance? They have their guiding document of what the principles are and how the regulation from the commission are, what they're supposed to do. Do you have an evaluators a guideline document that?
Right, that no one really reads it. But I said that, yeah, it's that thing that no one really reads it all. But yes, there are guidelines, and there is the code of conduct that we have to keep in mind, which is actually a very interesting document that you need to. That this is one of the things I'm sure that all evaluators are reading, because
Is that ethics or what?
It's a matter of ethics and under which terms you can or cannot evaluate a specific application. So that's another layer here about consistency and trying to avoid all kind of accidents in the process.
Yeah. So just as an example, Daniela, can you explain the first time do you remember the first time you evaluated?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
Let's just take it like this. Examples are always good. So what happened? So you came, and how did you inform yourself? What did you read? What kind of information did you acquire yourself to be prepared for the task?
Yeah. No, I think the briefing and all the documents briefing that Alessia mentioned, also Yoram mentioned, that they circulate. So not only the briefing meeting, but also then they send separately materials that you can always, slides that you can always go back and check. So especially, as you said, Niels, the first time that I did it, I was extremely conscious of, checking each of not only the sub criteria, but really it was the wording. And how to put a sentence together in such a way that you are specific, but you can't be too specific. Because if you are too specific, also the European Commission is not going to accept that comment, because you might have made a mistake. So, for example, I can't say that you are the seven objectives that you are addressing. I can't put the number there in front of objectives, because I might miss one, and then at that point, an appeal might start from the proposal, the proposer, right? But I have to be specific on, when I'm stating a comment which is either positive or negative, make an example of what I mean by saying whatever they're doing was excellent. What exactly does it mean? So the wording for me at my first evaluation was the most difficult part.
Sure.
Being specific, and the Commission gives us within this material example of wordings